My guest today is Rory Bradley, a filmmaker from Belfast, Ireland, and a graduate of the Irish National Film School. His debut film, We Beg to Differ, has screened at prestigious festivals, including South by Southwest and Clermont-Ferrand, Hot Docs, and Palm Springs Short Fest. The film qualified for the Academy Awards, earned nominations from the London Critics Circle and the Irish Film and Television Academy, and is currently a candidate for the 2026 European Film Awards. Now, he is a 2025 Sundance Ignite Fellow and is currently developing his first narrative feature. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome filmmaker Rory Bradley and his short film, We Beg to Differ, to the show. Welcome.
Thanks very much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I must ask, Rory, where did you get the idea for your film?
Um, it first started from I found this community of drifters through. I was producing a music video. My brother's a director as well, and I was helping him produce this music video, and we were doing it in Dublin, which is about 2 hours away from where I'm from in Belfast. And I get talking to this guy who we'd hired to drift his car, and whenever I get speaking with him, it was just the way he spoke about. Uh, Drifting and this culture, it just seemed like it was the most important thing in his life, and it just seemed like this was, the reason why he went to work, the reason that kept him going, and that just really took me by surprise, just how passionate he was about this. So from there, I started researching into it and found myself back in Belfast, where I'm from, and I came across this community called Underground Diving, and I went up to their yard where they film, and in the film, there's this wall, and on the wall, there's the names of a lot of people in the community that had died, and I just seen these people just going in circles around these names, and it just really struck me as, on one hand, one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, but on the other hand, one of the most heartbreaking. And I was just saying these people finding a way to uh deal with grief and find a way to just keep on pushing. And I was really inspired by that. And then everything sort of came after that.
Well, for the audience out there, what's the difference between diffing versus drifting?
Yeah. So diffing is whenever a rear wheel drive car will drive in circles doing donuts or doing figures of eights. Where drifting is more like people will go out into like a track and they'll drift in like a track. Where this is more like street drifting. So it's unless you're doing it in a private yard, which a lot of the time isn't happening, it's illegal. So the difference is sort of drifting's usually more legal and diffing is usually the more illegal part. And the term actually comes from if you weld the differential in your car, the back wheels can spin at the same time. So that's why it's called diffing.
Ah, all right. Well, that makes complete sense to me. I'm a car guy, so now I completely understand, especially after I watched your film. Now, I know that you went into the diffing community overall, because I did see the names on the wall in that particular
Mhm.
park, but overall, what is the community like?
They're great. Um, we spent, I think we had 16 shooting days. Um, and we spent a lot of time with lots of different people. Like the community's really, really big. Like the car scene in where we filmed is massive. Like we would show up to some drifts and there'd be, like hundreds of cars there with so many people. So like it's a very big community, and the thing about them, which I think is just so incredible, is how they come together to support each other, and they have this mentality of that no one can be left behind, that there's safety in numbers, and so you really get this like it's this like brotherhood between them all, which I think is really important. Like I think that for in life, I think that like community can be so transformative, especially if you're going through a hard time. That community can be your way of, finding a reason to keep on going, finding a reason to be better. So yeah, the people in that community are amazing.
Well, there was a statement in the film that says there's been a lot of suicide in the car scene. Why is that?
I think it's a cocktail of factors. I think that like in the north of Ireland, we have one of the highest suicide rates in Europe, and especially in North Belfast, where I'm from. Uh, and I think it's like it's a complicated place politically. Like we had basically a civil war called the Troubles, which seemed two sides of one side that sees himself as Irish, one side that sees himself as British go to war with each other, with the British Army being involved as well. And I think the legacy of that conflict means that a lot of people that grew up in Belfast grew up with post-traumatic stress. They grew up with generational trauma. You know, they live in or we live in like a post-conflict state, and I think that brings a lot of complications. And then on top of that, yeah, the pressures of you know you've got the pressures of just everyday life of life is so expensive now for people to live. You've also got the pressures of you know social media. You've got the pressures then of drugs coming in, and if you get addicted to drugs, so you've just got all these influences that play into people ultimately coming to a point where they might not be able to cope with it anymore. And sadly, that's a common thing in Belfast. And what's also common is there's like a domino effect with suicide that you often. So once it happens one time, usually the friends and the family don't know how to necessarily cope with the grief and don't know how to deal with it. So you often find that whenever there's one, that there's more to follow, that they come in clusters, and it's sort of whenever it gets in the community, it's hard to get that out.
I think it was back in, I think it was in 2000. I was in Ireland, and I had heard that the suicide rate in young people was high. So that's 25 years ago.
Mm.
And I was told for a lot of them, they would rather look for work or the possibility of living elsewhere than being in Ireland, because it can be a tough situation in certain communities. Is that still true today?
Yeah, I think it is, and it depends what part of Ireland you're talking about as well. You know, the north of Ireland is still under British rule, and the south of Ireland has its own government, and they're both very different. They both have two two very complex but two very different situations. I think in the north of Ireland, what you have is, like I was saying, it's the aftermath of conflict. I think that's the main reason, and I think Ireland's always had a high immigration rate, and that's still true today. But like in terms of work, like there is work to be had, but I think that with with just like the cost of living at the minute, even if people are working, it's not really enough to like the idea of having a house is becoming impossible. So I think young people, for the most part, can feel a bit hopeless, but that's why communities like the diffing community are so important, because I think within the hard times and within all these dark, bad times, that there's so much good to be found, and that even though things are hard, whenever you see this humanity of people coming together and supporting each other and finding a way to deal with it, that's what life's about. And I think that's why I was so drawn to this community, because it's taken it by its ears, and it's going, even though things are hard right now, I'm gonna fight for what I want. I'm gonna try this thing. I'm like, even if I'm not allowed to do this, it doesn't matter, because I'm trying to survive, and me and my friends are doing this together.
Yeah, I picked that up in the film. And does the statement of suicide in the film, does that have something to do with the opening scene in the film?
Um, so the person whose funeral that was didn't actually die by suicide. But within the context of the film, uh, like I never wanted to make it explicitly clear, because the cause of death there isn't what's actually important. It's about how this community is coming together through death, and it doesn't matter if this is someone that's lost their life through suicide or a car accident. And in this case, it was actually cancer. Um, and so yeah, it's not explicitly to do with suicide, but in the tone of the film, it doesn't matter what it is. The cause of death isn't important.
Yeah, because when I saw the opening scene, it took me by surprise. But as the film went on, like you said, it's the support of the community, regardless, what the cause was. Uh, is the sport of
Mhm.
diffing and revving helping in the areas of mental health? Because I looked at the sport and listening to those in the film, that it seems to help to keep those that may have mental health issues to focus on something positive, correct?
Absolutely. Like if you think what it take, like all these things that it can give you, like the idea of like, you go out on a Thursday night and you meet with your friends and you just drift around and you get that high of adrenaline, you socialize with people, you get that buzz, you get that high from it. And you can compare that to like, you could go out and for people that might have been struggling with addiction or maybe just people that just, you know, enjoy risky behaviors, like, and I think it's also not like it's like we shouldn't shy away from that. Like some people enjoy that, and I think that like it's not about just condemning that and saying that that's wrong. I think it's a way of finding a way to like channel that energy, and if you can channel that energy into this community isn't hurting anyone. They're taking their cars and what they're doing, even though it kind of looks dangerous in the film, it's not actually dangerous. They're driving in circles. The most they're going to do is bump their car, and like there's not actually going to be any real physical harm caused to them or anyone else. So I think in terms of the mental health aspect, like it's it's just something to do. It's a passion. It's a hobby. It's like anything else. And I think those things are so important. And especially like for people that might be vulnerable, it really gives you something that's fun and exciting to do because if you're if you're struggling with something and you're trying to find something to do, I think it can be a really good, and it depends on the community that you find. Listen, there's drifting communities all over the place, and they're not all going to be the same. I can only speak from my experience of the people that I met and dealt with, and that community is so supportive of each other.
So how is you have a scene in the film where law enforcement shows up. And
Mhm.
how much, I mean, does the diffing community, do they get in trouble a lot from the police? And what happens if they get caught?
Yeah, like they drift a lot, and most of the film is set in this yard that they drift in. But when what happens sometimes is that the yard gets closed down. So the council will come and they'll shut the yard down because in the case of the place that they were drifting, there's one house nearby it that would give a noise complaint. So the place would get shut down and they would then, if they want to go drifting, they go out and they drift on the streets and they find corners, and what they do is they usually line their cars to block off like a junction so that the police can't get in. And you can see in the in not the opening scene, but the second scene in the film that they have it blocked off, but just not well enough, and this car manages to squeeze through. So what happens then is whenever they're forced into these situations, like at the end of the day, the police are also just doing their job, like what they're doing is illegal and their job is to try and stop them. So I don't I don't feel any bad way towards them about that. Um what they do if they get caught, like it's quite common that you can lose your license or uh you could get charged with like dangerous and reckless driving. Um And what's more difficult is say someone's on probation or someone has already got other offenses. It's hard where if you're doing this as a way to try and better yourself and escape from these things. What's quite hard and what's quite difficult is what you're doing is still deemed as illegal. So it's this way of, even though what you're doing, in my opinion, isn't wrong, you're still finding yourself in the same, like you can still find yourself in bother with the police. So it's about trying to get these spaces to be uh try and get more legalized yards where they're not being forced out onto the streets, because that's where then they get themselves in danger from the police. Um, so it's really, in Belfast, it's really up to the city council to give them these spaces.
Yeah, and I think that's a positive thing that if they would give them the spaces, it takes them off the street. I know here in the States, there are certain cities that have a very, very big problem with car groups that are diffing in major intersections and
Mm,
wrecking havoc to the point to where it is actually endangering lives. And some of the laws have been changed that if you do get caught and you get arrested, your car is not only impounded, your car is crushed. So you don't
yeah,
get it back. And some of these
yeah.
cars are not cheap. And some of these cars are very, very expensive.
Yeah,
So,
I've actually
but
watched. I've watched some videos of. It was actually in Houston. I've watched some videos of I think they call them slideshows there, and I can't believe what I'm seeing when I see it. It's pure chaos. They stand without, like, because in my film there's an embankment where they stand up on top of, but in Houston the stuff I've seen is people just standing on the street, and you see cars hitting people, and it's absolutely mental.
yeah, they've been working very, very hard to crack down on that here. And because some of the
Mm,
intersections that they get caught doing it at night, I think those intersections are as wide as 6 lanes. So you have
mm.
an intersection that is huge. So you can get two, sometimes three cars doing donuts at the same time. And like you said, you can see the videos online where people get hit. And then you add
Mm.
the motorcycle, the superbike culture mix into it because you can go on the freeway here in Houston, and it is not unusual to get passed by a sport bike doing over 100 miles an hour, and he's doing a wheelie, and he's standing in the
Yeah,
seat. So it's
yeah,
not uncommon. I mean, it's a shock when you see it. It's kind of cool, but at the same time, you're really worried that if that guy crashes, it's over.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so yeah, I think most of the videos online are probably based here in Houston. But one of the things that I really loved about your film is that the car culture is very, very positive for young people. And you have this scene where they're in the car park doing the diffing, and I saw these young children watching. You could tell their movements. They were getting excited. And what I loved about that scene is that those kids, they're going to be brand new car enthusiasts, just adding to the culture as they get older. So I thought that was an extremely positive thing to see in this film.
Yeah, completely. Like, it's something I really wanted to show in the film. I really wanted to show that, like, this is something that, like, is in people's blood. Like, this is what they're born into. This is the culture that they grow up in. Like, these kids are given this passion from such a young age, and then you get to understand, I feel like, through seeing through seeing this culture through these children's eyes, that you then get this understanding of, like, why people are doing this, like what has drew them to it. So I felt like that was really important. And uh yeah, like, there's a wee kid in the film, wee Sean, and you see him in the car as well, and, like, he's just amazing. Not many people notice, but there's a scene where he's actually sitting on his dad's knee and he's steering uh, while going around, and, like, it's just amazing. And it's just like, uh, you know, his passion already is this, and I love that.
I have to ask you because one of the things about this film that really impressed me was not just the film itself, because I love the film, but your film was nominated at Clermont-Ferrand International Short Film Festival. You were nominated for an IFTA. You were nominated at South by Southwest. I mean, you have an award-winning film here. What's that been like for you?
It's been really weird. Like whenever I made this film, like I never made it to be like it's my first film, so it was never really like I never had really ambitions of like doing a big festival run or really no, I didn't know what Clermont-Ferrand was, you know. So and then you finish the film and someone's like, oh, there's this festival, Clermont-Ferrand, you should submit to that, and you're like, okay, great, I'll submit, and then you get in, you're like, all right, great. And then you go and you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like in one of the screenings there was 1,500 people in the cinema, which for a short screening is like it's unheard of, you know? So you've got 1,500 people watching your film. So it's been really good. I think the nicest thing about it's been uh that the film's got to travel, that you know, all over the world, audiences have got to see it, and it's been so interesting seeing how people from different cultures and different backgrounds have connected with the film. And because for me, like I didn't make it for audiences, to be honest. I made it for myself. And so being able then to go out and share this thing has been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at the list, I mean, you got accepted in some of the biggest film festivals in the world. And for your first time out, it's nothing but impressive. And so, when you're there, what are some of the audience's reactions to the film, and what kind of questions do you get?
Um, it's funny, like I think naturally not everyone's gonna like your film. So you first of all have to accept that. Um, and then I think people really understand this idea of like freedom. I feel like a lot of people have related to that, of this like striving for some sort of freedom in their lives, and I feel like audiences have related to that, and how do they search for that in their own lives. Um, and I think that's been really nice, having those conversations with people. Um, I think a lot of the questions that we've been asked come around the names on the wall and how it is that these people have died. Because some people think it could be car crashes or is it suicide. Uh, and I think as well, some like quite often we get asked about the approach to the cinematography and how we went about that.
So, when I saw the names on the wall, I just thought it was suicide.
Mm,
Because mostly based on the fact of the narration of the film, that's how I
hmm
looked at it. Not one time did I ever think of a car crash. Like you said,
Yeah.
you're not no one no technically no one's gonna die diffing.
hmm Yeah.
It would
Exactly.
probably have to be driving to and from work or home or whatever. But yeah, when I saw the names on the wall and listening to the narration, it's just young people trying to find an outlet for themselves, um, feeding their passion, being, belonging to a community, and having friends with the same passion. And that's really
hmm
what I loved about this whole film. But yeah, the names on the wall, I think it does get people thinking as to what happened.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So for you, what would you like the audiences to take away from seeing We Beg to Differ?
Um, I think I'm really interested in like films and stories that are in these gray areas that people might have some sort of prejudice against before going in. And I think that from the outside, what people might see might they might feel some sort of negative thing towards this community because they see the cars, they hear how loud they are. And I think that my hope is that by the end of the film that people just realize that maybe these communities and these people that they might judge are more complex than they imagined, and that like I think that being empathetic is just understanding that everyone has a story and everyone's been through some sort of hardship. And that if you drive to a junction and you see it blocked off because there's people drifting in the middle, that they might be doing that in memory of their friend that died last week, and they're trying to find a way to cope with that because the place that they usually do it's just been shut down. And I feel like just having that understanding and taking that understanding that everyone's different, uh, and how we cope is different. I feel like, yeah, I hope just people are maybe a little more empathetic.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Rory, uh, are you are you were you Oscar qualified for last year's Oscars or for 2026?
Yeah, it was for so you have 2 years to submit to it. So we submitted last year and we didn't get on the shortlist. I think we made the mistake of, again, because my first film, we submitted the first year after we won the festival that let us submit to it. Uh, so yeah, we should have waited to next year because now we would have had more press, and you know, on the festival circuit you get to meet some more people that you could have maybe tried to ask them to vote for you or something. But yeah, it's been a learning curve.
Oh, it is a very big learning curve for up and coming filmmakers. I've heard the stories, and it's when it comes to the film festivals, and if you have a film like yours that gets into the top film festivals, you get nominated. There is a very big learning curve to go through that and to understand what you have to do, understand how the system works. But you are in the running for the 2026 European Film Awards. That's like the European Oscar right there.
Yeah, yeah. So there's one in, I think it's 21 films get chosen as the candidates, and then they nominate maybe 4 or 5 films. So we got our candidacy through. It's a short film festival called Pop Shorts, and they've a feature side called the Talent Black Nights Festival. So the jury there selected our film, and then now how it works is all these 21 festivals, I think it's like the festival creative directors, get together, they watch the 21 films, they discuss them, and they choose then the 4 films which are going to get nominated. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, and you have a great film there, and you said it took what 16 days to film this, and with the cinematography, I know that it's more on, I guess, the cool dark side. What kind of camera did you use?
We shot it all on FX9 with one day on the FX3, and we broke the FX3.
Now, when you went into post production, did you use a particular color palette?
No, we just used like a Rec 709 LUT, and then worked with a great colorist, uh, Leandro, who works in a company called Raygun in Dublin. Uh, and he's incredible. And myself and the cinematographer, we had some references that we sat down with, and yeah, he really just like we shot it all in a very particular style. And then with the color grading, Leandro was really able to just bring out just the real texture I've had really felt to be there. So uh, that was both the cinematographer Daniel, myself, and Leandro.
So how did you feel the first time when you saw the film in its completed form?
Oh, so weird. It was so strange because I'd been cutting it before, and I feel like whenever you're cutting it, like you don't like I feel like you lose all sight of whether it's a good film or not. So whenever I finished it, like I didn't really know. I was like, is this good or is this really bad? And then I'm showing people, and like I first showed like my girlfriend and my family, and they were all getting really emotional, and I was like, oh shit, okay, maybe this is actually gonna be all right. Uh so yeah, like the first time watching it color graded was definitely a big moment because it's the first time you really, you take out the time code and you're like, all right, this is actually a movie now.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it's not just seeing the film in its completed form for the first time. but actually getting to see it in a theater for the first time, I mean, that
Yeah,
must have been incredible.
yeah, yeah. It was. It was very emotional. It's like you pour all yourself into this, and like you spend so much time with these people and so much time with this project, and I feel like whenever you make films, you spend so much time doubting yourself and not knowing. You hit these blocks where you wake up in the middle of your night and you're like, I've made such a mistake. What have I done? And you're pulling your hair out and you're stressed. And so whenever you get that moment where you get to sit down in the theater and you watch the completed thing, uh, yeah, it was a really special moment. I don't think it's something that I'll ever forget.
Oh, I can imagine. So, what are you working on now?
Um, I'm not sure if I want to say too much. I'm working on a short documentary that I'd hopefully do in the States. And then I'm also working on I'm hoping to develop a narrative film that's set in the same world as We Beg to Differ.
Oh, well, I can't wait to see that. So when you get that done, you're gonna have to come back again and we can absolutely discuss that. And ladies and gentlemen, in the underground world of diffing, a community finds solace in their passion as they navigate personal struggles and challenges both on and off the road. Now, this film isn't just about cars doing donuts in the streets or in a closed off area. This film is really about mental health. There are areas like Ireland, for example, where the suicide rate is higher than other parts in the world. And young people today are just looking for constructive outlets to unleash their passion for the things they like, to blow off steam and to focus on something besides the problems that they may or may not be facing. Now, the short film We Beg to Differ opens the conversation even more about mental health and what can be done to lower suicide rates in young people. And Rory, I want to thank you so much for sharing this film with me. I found it to be very enlightening and very powerful. And I can see why this film has been nominated across the globe. So congratulations to you.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Audible, and more. So I want to thank you for watching, and you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.